I know.
It's not the same feeling, you know.
Yeah, even though, for example, having been a political journalist, people prepare. I mean, I used to just read and then go, and that's how I enjoyed it. I mean, that's my own genre, I would say. So, uh, I mean, I like that. Of course, we should be well read. I mean, we should have research as our background, but I guess talking helps, and that is the flavor that I've kept here to make it look very conversational and natural.
Okay.
Vikasji, are we going ahead now?
Yeah, ma'am, we
Yes, ma'am, we can start now.
start now. Will host. Yeah, Jam will host. So over to you, Jam.
Yeah. Thank you,
I
Deepak.
The session will be recorded and it will be live on YouTube as well.
Thank you, Deepak.
Yeah.
Sound. I can't get the sound.
Jam, you have to. I think you have to unmute yourself, I guess.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah,
am I on?
Yeah, now
yeah, yeah.
you are.
Now you're fine.
Yes, you are audible, Jam.
A very good evening to all our viewers, partners, and our speaker. We at Her World, in collaboration with the Policy Center and Gender Lab of Miranda House, feel honored to curate this talk show on the topic Creativity, the best healer in the times of crisis, COVID 19. The unprecedented crisis that we face, in fact, still facing, led us to explore different ways to heal with it, one of which is definitely being creative in our own ways. As we attempt to discuss themes around women empowerment, gender justice, creativity in lockdown, and more, I hope this day brings many insights our way. Let me introduce you to our speaker, Ms. Deepa Agarwal. She is an author, poet, and translator. Ma'am has published more than 50 books for children and adults. She has received many prestigious awards for her writing, including the NCERT National Award for Children's Literature for her picture book Ashok's New Friends. Her books have been translated into many Indian and foreign languages. Ma'am has received a senior fellowship from the Ministry of Culture to research children's literature and presented her work at many international and international conferences and literature festivals. Gender equality, environment, and education are recurring themes in her work. Her latest works are The Begum, Journey to the Forbidden City, and Kashmir, Kashmir. We welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Our moderator for the day is Ms. Rakhi Bakshi, founder, managing director, editor, and director of Her World, a leading web portal that believes in empowering with information on sustainability, gender equality, and other social issues, creating allies along the way. She is a veteran media professional, the former media advisor to the Lok Sabha Speaker, and a role model for all girls and women all over the world. I welcome our speaker for the day and invite Rakhi Bakshi ma'am to lead the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayam. And Jayam also comes from honor of women, an organization and a platform which equally believes in empowering women, especially providing justice to them, and has been continuously working towards that. So I really, really feel very thankful, Jayam, that you've joined us and introduced us. And we will keep, looking at issues of women empowerment, gender equality, gender justice, and of course, what binds us all together is that creative thread. And that is what we feel very delighted in having with Deepa Agarwal, a writer of repute, a writer of delight, I would say. And her work, as has been introduced by Jayam, and as we know, brings you a variety of literature, including mostly a children's literature, which is very, very crucial and important. So this is going to be a conversation, a talk, as I said before also. So Ms. Agrawal, welcome to the show. But first of all, how has it been hailing from the, as they say, the soil that you come from, which is of the hills, Uttarakhand, and the journey that began? For example, I'm reminded of, what Ruskin Bond writes, that I used to do nothing but just watch life go by. And that's how I became a writer. How has it been for you, Deepaji?
Thank you so much, Rakhi. And first of all, thanks so much to Her World for inviting me to talk about my work in this wonderful forum. Well, that's an interesting question you asked about my journey, and you talked about Ruskin Bond, watching the world go by. And I think that's the way for every writer. You are watching the world, whether you're busy or whether you're doing nothing. You're watching the world go by and, soaking in that experience and observing. Basically, I always feel a writer is an observer. And, your observations and those little scattered fragments of life that you observe and reflect upon, that somehow it seeps into your stories. So that's how you become a writer, by being very observant and a person who is also curious. For me, it's always been the question why. Even now, when I talk about my writing, or I, talk to young students about how to, what is the first thing in a story? It's the questions that you're trying to answer through your stories. And I didn't start writing very early in life. I started in my mid 30s, and I started by contributing to magazines, and some of my early short stories for children. They were contributions to magazines, and I was fortunate to find a very, sympathetic editor, I would say, because that's something a writer needs, a beginning writer, an editor who is there for you and guides you in your journey, and helps you to understand the whole process of creating fiction. Because the time when I started in the mid 80s, there were no workshops. I mean, these days there are numerous blogs and online workshops, live workshops. So that was the only way that you could learn how to perfect your fiction. And well, but the first thing I would say is, for a writer, is to read a lot. And I was a very avid reader. So I think that contributed greatly to the fact that I loved stories so much that the day came that I too wanted to write my own stories. So I think that's what really set me off on my journey. My love for reading, my love for stories, and all the stories I encountered from from the stories my mother told me to the books I read.
So one question, as you said, and a journalist also, I think that is a common platform here, or common theme or thread here, that we are also very curious people, and we ask too many questions actually. So the question here is that you focused on children's literature, and also mixed it a little bit with education, dealing with literature related to children. First of all, one would say that it's about folklore, it's about making it funny at times, it's about making it a little away from the routine, a little frolic. What was it that you were looking at when you looked at mainly children's literature? What is it that you had in mind, and why were you focusing more on that? And what kind of twist, or what kind of dimension did you lend to your own kind of literature for children?
Well, frankly speaking, when I started writing, I wasn't really looking at children's literature. I started off by writing articles. I was freelancing, and my stories just came in by the way. I was freelancing for magazines and newspapers at that time, and then one day, because my children were young that time, going to school, and I was reading through, flipping through the magazine, Target magazine, which I started contributing to, and I did, and it was on an impulse, I would say, that I thought, let me try writing a children's story. And since my first stories didn't get published, I always like to share this so that other young writers know that you're not going to succeed right away. Maybe after 2 or 3 tries. So I I was not ready to give up, you know. And I continued. And as I mentioned earlier, my editor was also very encouraging. She said, try again. And so then, little by little, as I got published more and more. That is what uh, encouraged me to write for children. And then also, I found that I discovered a lot of material inside me, all, childhood memories, and also little incidents from the lives of my children, remarks. And in the beginning, I was writing what people call problem stories and real life stories about the little problems children face in their day-to-day life. And but also, since I was really writing the kind of stories that I like to read myself. And so I wrote, mystery and adventure stories because I had enjoyed reading those when I was young, and still do actually. Nothing like a good detective story to
Yeah, remember the
while
famous.
away the time, escape, from the world. And apart from that, it's the situation has changed in the sense that I've been experimenting more in different genres. So I've gone on to write with not only biography but historical fiction, and also fantasy. And I've used these genres to often bring out things, issues that are troubling me. Like one of my books, Blessed, it's a fantasy, and it's on the theme of education for girls. And the idea actually, I think, developed from the time when, the Taliban was not allowing girls to go to school.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that idea took hold of me, and then I developed this imaginary land where girls are forbidden to read and write. It's considered a sin for them. And how this one girl, she's born with a gift, and how she discovers her abilities, and she's secretly practicing her reading and writing, and she goes on to change things for other girls. So you see, children's literature is a medium to change attitudes. Like my very first book, Ashok's New Friends, a picture book, which got the award, it was on gender equality. And that theme has cropped up again in my writing, whether it's the biography of Rani Lakshmi Bai or an imaginary diary of Noor Jahan as a teenager. So
Oh,
you see, there's so much scope in children's writing, and that is the time when attitudes are formed and cemented. So I think that is something for us to think about.
so I think when I was also reading, I really understood that when you write actually literature for children, it's not actually for children in that literal sense, because then you're carrying a whole universe, too many dimensions, ideas about history, culture, heritage. And not only the children who are reading it, but through them, the adults who are reading, it creates a picture through a prism, which is very interesting, I think. So the narrative which is created here is very empowering, at the same time very informative, and a lot of fun to go ahead with. So I think that must have been great idea, and I think some of your books, as I was reading, comes from your experiences, as also like the fire around your house and all that. So whatever you experience, you try to weave it into something which interested others, or which created a whole chain of understanding.
Yes, exactly. You know, when you look back, memory is a very powerful tool for writers. And there is so much, it's a treasure bag sometimes, little incidents which as a child you were not able to understand. And that's what I have gone back. Like in the story you mentioned, Fire. It's about, it's basically about friendship between two, three girls actually, and the third girl, she's the maid's daughter. They're not equal, in status, you can say. And the whole issue is about the lie. When they set the fire by mistake, the girl who's the maid's daughter, she lies and she says, I had nothing to do with it. And the two other girls are very upset about it, you know. So this incident had actually taken place in my childhood, and I remember it bothered me a lot that how would could she tell a lie? But it took me this story after like I don't know how many years, 30 years, to work it out and understand, get to that meaning. So it's
we,
unanswered questions.
we all have that cupboard. We sometimes open it and take our little secret out when we only have the courage to actually take it out. And I think that sometimes, like in your case, becomes a piece of literature or writing. But talking about some of the other books, in fact, let me take a jump here, but I'll keep coming back and forth. Is also, let me right now talk about the book that maybe should interest many. And you talked about historical fiction. So how and why Kashmir, Kashmir, which is of course, soon to be launched.
Well, yes, I know this is a question a couple of people have asked me already. Why Kashmir, Kashmir? Well, it was just a chance conversation last year at the World Book Fair. I visited the Scholastic India bookstall and I met my publisher there, Shantanu Dasgupta, and my editor, Sushmita Chatterjee, and we were just talking, and then they mentioned that we feel, that there should be some stories about children in Kashmir with all the issues, burning issues that are there. And then suddenly it struck me. I said, oh, I would like to write this book, though it had not occurred to me earlier. And that's where the idea formed up. And so this is a book with, there are different stories, different situations. A lot of them arose out of like news reports or, the 3 times I visited Kashmir, there were three different types of visits. Once on a holiday with my children and husband. Another time at the Academy Translation Camp. And the third time was a Lit Fest at a school in Srinagar. So very different experiences. And then, of course, the fact that Kashmir is always in the news, and it's always about, the militant strikes, the bomb blasts, and, and then recently.
Within that, its own world which goes on. I mean, yeah.
Yes. So that is how this book came about. And my, attempt to try and understand why is it Kashmir was such a wonderful holiday destination, and now it's such a dangerous place. So that's again the question.
So since it's soon to be really getting launched, and I have no idea what kind of stories are you touching, but having been, I have worked there actually earlier when I was with the news channel, and I had a chance to interact with a lot of people, especially girls, and you would be. I mean, there are so many layers, as you rightly said, and you are bringing it out in your book. If, for example, girls who are going to study, the kind of aspirations they have, once I asked, let me just share. Once I asked a girl who was going to school or college, and I said, "What do you want to become? Why are you going to study? You're taking so much trouble." She said, "I want to become the chief minister of my state."
Wonderful.
So the kind of confidence, aspiration, ambition, dream, all mixed into one. Are you
Yes.
looking at some of these?
Yes. See, the thing is, I remember those casual conversations at the school Lit Fest, and this very confident young girl. And as you said, you asked, what do you want? And she said, no, she was sure. She said, I'm going to become a doctor. I'm going to study for, sit for my medical entrance tests. And my father's a doctor, and I too will become a doctor. So, that confidence, and then the other children, they were so enthusiastic. I had a book which is out of print, sadly, not just girls. It is stories of girl empowerment. And I have a photograph too with a bunch of little girls all holding up that book. So that really goes to show that given opportunities, given encouragement, how far girls can travel. And that is why I feel it's so important for us to focus on stories of girls apart. We don't want to leave the boys out. There are many boys do wonderful things in this book too. Boys who are responsible and brave and focused. That's also there. But yeah,
I think it's getting launched at a very opportune time because 4G has just been restored. It's really making news all over. And I can really, one of our team members, somebody who really supports our Ishrat from Kashmir, who joins us each time. I hope she has, or even if she hasn't, I know that, her whole aspiration has been, every time she has said that, okay, I really like 4G to be there. And we are glad that it's really restored there and there so people can connect well. But talking about again literature and as we say in our theme today is that it has really helped us heal, or creativity of any kind also, but literature, yes, because when you, for example, literally pick up a pen and bring it to paper, it's that process of healing which happens. So whether we are now doing it on computer, I think the whole expression, the whole outlet that is there brings us different kind of energy, which is really a booster, isn't it, Miss Agrawal?
I'm sorry, that was not very clear to me.
So I'm saying, I mean, if you can you hear me? Just please say yes. Or
Sound is a little blurred. Yeah.
is it okay now?
Yeah, it's better. Thanks.
So yeah, so the question was that, especially in the times of COVID last year, we saw that creativity of all kinds, whether somebody wrote something or whether somebody painted something, in your case, literature, how has it really, in true sense, been a healer, so uh, talk a little bit more about that as to how it helps us retain that energy or maybe improve on that.
Well, definitely, the creative arts are definitely very therapeutic. Though, I had a problem writing in the early days of the lockdown because of the stress that was, uh, at the back of my mind. It was kind of blocking me. But then when I determined, I said, I'm going to sit down, and I had a deadline because this book was due. And I sat down, and it really helped me by focusing on my writing. It helped me block out all the other anxieties. And that's really whether you're writing a diary. I know there were people writing blogs, writing poetry, writing, online. There was a lady writing a daily diary on Facebook. And I asked her about it, and she says, yes, I have so many problems. I have young children. I have uh, an old father who is sight impaired. But and she would put up a very detailed account of her day, the food she cooked, and even the aches and pains she had. So she said, it really helps me to cope. So the creative arts can be a coping mechanism in any situation. And definitely with the pandemic, because you are cut off from everything else, you are cut off from, the relaxation of meeting your friends, for example. I mean, okay, you can have phone conversations, but it's not the same as meeting somebody face to face. But if you can uh, build up an imaginary world at that time, you can lose yourself in that world. And that is extremely it's a kind of a relief that you getting out from this, the daily stresses of which COVID brought on us, which were different from, the usual stress of living. It was here the fear. Oh my God, are my groceries going to bring the the virus into my house? You're watching your groceries. But
I
okay,
thought about it.
all that is out of the way. And for those few hours, you are relieved. And I think that is what helped so many of us to maintain a balance. And in fact, I was thinking, seriously, I was thinking, let me take sketching classes. If I had had more time, I would have loved to develop, you know, that artistic
Okay.
impulse of mind as well. I know people who brushed up their musical skills this time,
Yeah.
and it was great relaxant. Just,
So, yeah, people, some of them have come up actually. There have been movies, let's say, even OTT platform, the cinematic expressions to writing of all kinds, to paintings, to music, as you say. I mean, on YouTube. I mean, both you and I would agree that there are more singers now who are experimenting
absolutely. Yeah,
different kinds.
because even I, I made so many videos, and it surprised me because it was not something I was doing earlier, maybe a little bit, but there was a big demand for it. And I realized that I quite enjoyed doing it, reading out my stories, reading out my poetry.
Yeah.
So uh, you were, you know, honing new skills, discovering new abilities, new talents in yourself.
And
So
adaptive also. You adapted to new things, isn't it? So that
exactly. So that is one thing that is, if you can say there's something positive about COVID-19, that was it. Making new discoveries about yourselves. Okay, I can do this too. I had never thought of it earlier. Okay, and right now I'm saying, let me try it. What I
so
can.
many more to you, more far to you, of course. So two things, of course. One is about, do you think, Sapna is asking a question. Yeah. A
Right.
healing process. Sapna is saying, Sapna from Miranda, she's writing and she thinks certainly, she agrees with you that it's a healing process. And Sapna, of course, in her own way, she has been also interacting a lot with students and in her own, I think that's also part of creativity because we had a session on digital education and we talked to teachers and students both. So a lot of young people are watching you, the writer Deepa Agrawal. And one thing also I would like to ask you, if people say how to become a writer, like you said, you have to be an observer, you have to see things, you have to look at life, maybe sip it, absorb it, but in plain terms, like a message to all these young viewers who are watching, or maybe even not young, even for me, uh, what is it that helps actually to be able to write and to become a writer?
Well, the very first thing is to read. Read a lot. Read books in many different genres. That is, the beginning of a writing career. And here I'd really like to quote Stephen King, the famous horror fiction writer, best-selling writer. He has written this wonderful memoir on writing. And I would really recommend everyone to read that book because he says a writer needs to read as many hours a day as they write because that is where you unconsciously you pick up the whole trajectory of a story of creating a plot, and you do it unconsciously without attending say a workshop or something. So, and then there are so many things reading. You discover different styles. You discover different ways of telling a story, and also experiences, because experience is very important for a writer. And then, of course, vocabulary and the beauty of expressing, uh, using words, language in a manner that will grip your reader. That's the thing, that uh, writing is about gripping the imagination of your reader, and what they call the willing suspension of disbelief, making them believe in this imaginary world that you're creating. The second thing I'd like to say is to be regular in your writing. And that can be done by writing a diary. Writing a diary is wonderful practice. Earlier, I was talking about how writing diaries help people get through this pandemic. But writing a diary is very good practice for a writer. So these are two good ways to launch yourself into the world of writing fiction, if you're so inclined to write fiction.
Good for our team also, and I hope they're listening, because we are a portal and also a talk show, but our portal requires a lot of writing. And in fact, we invite and welcome all kinds of writers also to share their views, and that this platform is for them, mostly for women, but yes, on all other genders who are interested. Coming back to gender again and gender equality, in fact, I remember I met you at one of those workshops when we were talking to some of these young students. What would you say about women writers or women writing? Do you think it creates or brings about any such, I wouldn't say different, but something that makes it unique when they become writers, or they turn their stories into a perspective that they own?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important that women take the plunge into writing because it gives them a voice. I know things are changing, and girls these days uh, can be much more outspoken, but still at the end of the day, you see it's a man's world. So a woman who is not allowed to speak up at home, and I'm using the term allowed because a lot of the time people will literally shout her out. So this is one way of being able to express your opinions. It gives you a voice, and especially whether it's poetry or fiction, as you were talking about all those hidden experiences, you know, you can turn it into fiction. Whatever has happened to you, whatever you have internalized, and whatever is festering inside you can come out in the medium of fiction. Okay, you can write it as a person account, a genuine, something that you want to share with others, an experience, whether, it's abuse, violence, sexual abuse, you can do it. But not everyone is brave enough to, be so outspoken and upfront about it. But then if you can also get rid of that experience through the medium of fiction. And also, whenever you observed, there's a certain sisterhood uh, when you among women, when you see that other women are being uh, abused, if there's domestic violence, if they're not getting their due, you can also, as an observer, you can write those stories, and maybe it brings solace to somebody. Maybe it offers them some kind of support, that somebody can understand what is happening to me. So I think that's why, and I know there's a lot talked about why should women's writing be kept separate.
Exactly.
Yeah, why should be a separate genre? We are writers, we're not women writers. But
Yeah.
we have very different experiences, and some of my short stories, which are basically women's stories, they're all like again experiences, things I've observed of how girls were, you know, for them really, I wouldn't say victimized, but punished by society for mistakes they made out of thoughtlessness or immaturity, whatever. The way women are
Casual,
forced to stay
they're not
between.
alert. Yeah, those kind of things.
So that's why I feel it's really a wonderful outlet for women, fiction writing or poetry.
Yeah. What is it that gives you more delight, happiness, pleasure, poetry, or those, or any other form of writing?
Well, it's hard to say. Uh, I love writing poetry, but it's something that doesn't happen very consciously with me. It has to come on its own. Of course, sometimes if I do sit down and think about a particular issue or something, I can write, but most of the time, my poems will just emerge on their own. I mean, of course, it's the same with the fiction, but then it's easier to write on a theme, you know, coax a story out of you on a given theme. So they're two different, very different experiences. Though, yeah, I think poetry is the finest form of expression, I would say, because everything is so condensed and it makes such an impact right away. In a few words, you it really hits you. You know, a well-written poem. I
Yeah.
emotion.
Whenever we see, Dr. Nanda, who's the principal Miranda House, she's somebody who's also a prolific writer also, and writes beautiful poetry. I think some of it we have seen on social media sometimes, which comes out, and it only evokes that kind of expression coming from her, which is very beautiful. I think there's something lyrical about poetry, isn't it?
Wonderful, wonderful to hear that.
Yeah. So what next? I mean, yeah, Sapna has been okay. Yeah, Sapna, if there is any question that you'd like to ask and leave, Sapna has bad network.
It's about young adult. Okay. On the one hand, where young adult literature is a huge, it remains on the outskirts,
Hmm.
what we call as low brow.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a very good question. That's a fact, children's literature or young adult literature, it remains on the outskirts. People don't take it as seriously as, literary fiction for adults. But see, yeah, this is, I think this is a mistake because if you study children's literature or young adult literature seriously, you will find many depths and nuances, which you may block yourself out by just having that kind of bias against juvenile literature. Juvenile literature does not necessarily mean that it's simplistic. And this is a mistake, which is often made. Children's writers are not really given the same kind of respect or regard or recognition as writers for adults. And I've seen it. I've experienced it myself when I've written a book for adults. Uh, how much more recognition it's given, and how it's like as if I have grown up in this world of literature. I have risen in stature or something by writing that other work. But you have to also think that it's children's literature that creates readers for adult literature. That is something for somebody to, for people to understand. Okay, somebody is
But asking
uh,
you for suggestion.
uh, gender is a fluid term as opposed to Aristotle looks at males and female genders.
Okay, that's Isha. Up to you.
How do we move beyond the umbrella term of sex, and how do we look at, say, for instance, Judith Butler's gender trouble more seriously in this country? Okay, I'm sorry, I haven't read this book, and I know gender is a fluid term. It's a broad term, so definitely we need to think about this. Yeah, everyone is identified. That's absolutely true. And maybe And it happens a lot that, okay, you are identified, you're classified. So definitely you're absolutely right. We need to move beyond the umbrella term of sex. And we and that is, I think, literature can play a huge role in this by, you know, taking out more narratives, by considering this, sex and gender as something more fluid, as you suggest. But and that is happening.
That's
It-
exactly what we're agreeing on here also, is that there is this universe and where we can't limit. I mean, literature means limitless, isn't it? I mean, any idea, anything that you want to share, uh, from any random thought to a great piece of writing. I think it's an entire universe. So I think limiting literature is something which I wouldn't uh, go by.
yeah, that's absolutely true. Literature doesn't limit itself, whether it's the human world or the animal world or the imaginary world or the world of science fiction, of aliens. So literature has no boundaries in that sense. It's up to the writer and to the reader.
Okay. So before I take Sapna another say some steps to encourage young minds. Yes, I'll take that. But before that, Mr. RK has asked, is writing paying also? I mean, has it become financially viable to become a writer?
Okay, I'm sorry, it has not. There are very few writers who make serious money. You can see the bestseller writers whose books are selling in lakhs. They are the ones who can make a living out of writing. And there are very few of them, especially in our country, because there's not such a big readership. In countries like the United States, there are more millionaire writers. And of course, we know about J.K. Rowling.
Yeah, exactly. I was coming to that. My question was about, bearing the burden of bringing out a Harry Potter and that whole pressure.
Yeah, I know that's a pressure on all writers. But the thing is, at the same time, you have to understand, what are you writing? Why are you writing? Again, you come back to the eternal why. Why are you writing? Are you writing because you want to make money? Is that your aim? Then it's a kind of an artificial construct. Of course, one can write a pot boiler, but is it what you ultimately want? Okay, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Sure, you can write the kind of works that will sell, that will make money, but also it has to be. It's up to you. I wouldn't like to kind of uh, you know condemn any other kind of writing. But where I'm concerned, I write what I feel like writing. The story that is forming within me naturally. And I too have written, mythological works. I've written retold myths for children, and those are the works which sell better. But I won't say that they have brought me a huge income. But
Okay.
it's a choice. It's a choice you make when you set out to be a writer. Am I going to? But it's not absolute that you will become a bestseller writer because you think you will make money out of writing.
It's like saying I'm a writer because I write whatever I want to write. So
Exactly.
I'm making things easy for you. So any other question which is coming in? Because I think that's pretty interesting to be interactive. Anybody else who has a question? I have.
Well,
I don't know.
something to encourage young minds who wish to take up
Yeah,
literature.
Sapna asked
So,
something to encourage young.
see, uh, it's as I said earlier, it's your choice. You can have a profession. You can take up a profession which brings you an income. and you can be a writer on the side, that is also possible. So if you feel that you will not be able to make money from writing, then don't get discouraged. Just do it to give you pleasure. Because I have a writer friend. Sometimes I complain and I say, "What is this? We're not selling enough books." But he says, but think of the pleasure, and I like that idea. That okay, I've I've got my reward. I've had the pleasure of writing this book, and certain number of people have read it and enjoyed it, and that's my reward. I may not be a big bestseller. I may not be as rich as J.K. Rowling, but I I have got my reward in the pleasure of writing, of spending my time in an enjoyable way, and getting some satisfaction out of a book being published.
Okay, one question which is about, since you're also a translator, and this question came to me suddenly, is that so are you writing for all kinds of children? I mean, for example, you come from the hills. Sometimes there are children who are not maybe so privileged, maybe to read or get access to certain kind of literature. So how do you really look at some of those kids, children, who really need to read or need to go through that literary experience? Uh, what would we do for them as writers?
Okay. Yeah, this is a question that is often discussed, that, okay, are you only writing for the urban, middle class, Anglophone child? Well, I have some books, especially my picture books, which have been published by National Book Trust and Children's Book Trust. Now, those books, they have been translated into different Indian languages, and they are extremely reasonably priced books. So they are accessible to children, underprivileged children. They've been used for this Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan as well. And then there is this organization Pratham, who also so have libraries, and they have schools for underprivileged children. So books are being supplied to those children as well. And I do take up themes, though sometimes I have been discouraged, but I do take up themes because the kind of life, the circumstances I grew up in. I'm from a very small town, and we were very familiar with the life of the villages. So that way, it's not like children today who are totally separated from, say, the life of a person, their domestic worker, the children of their domestic worker. It was not like that when we were young. So that way, I feel to some extent I can understand, the life and underprivileged section of this.
One question which is my question is that sometimes what happens, even as journalists and as writers, as you rightly said, it's about experiences that we've lived through, we have been through, but how one can really write something which is just not being oneself, or just not me, but then just creating something very very detached, maybe from the surrounding, oneself, the inner being. I mean, talk about that whole creative process. It's sometimes very how should I say, it's like a churning that one goes through also.
Well,
So
sorry,
yeah,
please finish.
I'm saying just to deal with something which is totally not really coming out of experience as such, or something we've seen around, but something which is very very unlike your whole being. uh, I mean, can you explain to us that kind of a creative process churning?
Okay. Well, let me talk about my fantasy. A fantasy is like that. It is not something you directly experience. But, at the end of the day, uh, whatever emotions, whatever experiences that you write about, they are common human experiences. Whether you write a story for a very young child, uh, and you have animal characters, you know, well, animals don't, we know animals don't behave like that, but you, if we try to think of how the child enjoys, you know, reading about or hearing a story about animal characters, like an animal who's very clumsy, but I mean, I have a picture book like that, a hippopotamus who's clumsy, very helpful, but very clumsy. She wants to help at a party and she breaks all the plates and, things like that. But so that is the thing. This is common human experience. You can set it outside the realm of your own actual experience, and you can put it in the world of animals. You can set it in an imaginary land. You can have magical experiences, because sometimes, children just love magic, because they want to believe that wonderful things can happen. A child is still a hopeful, trusting person. And that is why they have such a great sense of fantasy. They want to believe, for example, in Santa Claus, that there is somebody who will bring us gifts, an imaginary person. And it takes them a long time to let go of that belief, or the tooth fairy. So, but that experience, that impulse of giving a gift is what any generous person would like to do, isn't it?
Sure. I think these are I think talks that I can tell you we've had editions before, and in the talk show we've gone through our own journey, me and my Her World team. But I think it's such a pleasure to talk about things, literature, which is so much around it, and I can but only thank you for being that person that you are, Deepa Agrawal, and through your writing, the kind of world that you're creating. So my compliments to you for that. But apart from that, let's talk about your future work or dreams, if any, of how do you want to take it ahead?
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for your kind words, Raki. Well, my future plans. Okay, yeah, I'm always full of plans. I think that's what keeps me going. I've been thinking of different themes. One is, after I finished my Kashmir book, I started off on a mythological story, but not for children, for adults. And based, because I had done, a collection of Mahabharata stories earlier, and an idea suddenly came to me in the course of my research. Because whatever you're retelling, also a lot of research is involved in that. So an idea came to me, and I started on that. So that is something I'm developing. And then there is another historical fiction which is set in my own home area of Uttarakhand. That is another book that I've been working on. I leave it aside, I pick it up again. So that is another big project for me. So that's what is.
Of course. Then, as we see, there are festivals around, and, there is a chance to meet, interact, get new ideas from each other. And touch wood that things are opening up also in 2021. Now that the vaccine is here. I think we are in February, and as they say, February is a beautiful month. I think a lot of good feelings, good work, good experiences are going to come our way. So, any other question that somebody else has to ask? Otherwise, I'll keep asking, and then we'll have to have Mr. Agrawal enjoy a little bit of whatever is left for Saturday evening.
Raki, may I speak?
Oh, ma'am, please. Thank you so much for
Okay,
joining.
no, I have nothing really to ask, but I would like to say that I really enjoyed this session. Thank you, Deepa Agarwal ji. For our students, it was very inspiring, but for me also, I found it extremely inspiring, because I think your words They were so authentic and they touched my heart, especially in the way you put down the project of writing. Looking at sisterly solidarity, engaging with the idea of, keeping a journal and looking at discipline of writing, all of that, I think in any work that we do, I think everybody believes that creativity is a simple thing, but creativity also requires discipline. And while creativity can be healing, it can also be agonizing. Creativity is agonizing, and I think you put it very beautifully. I have read your works. I'm a lover of children's literature. I find them far more, they touch my heart far more than other kinds of literature do. I do find that the reflections in your work not only provide us an understanding of culture and heritage, there is also a link with giving us a certain kind of a value, an ethical value. I personally like that. Your books in Pratham or the others books that I have read, I have found that ethical value is something that you bring in your work, something that even Sudha Murthy does. So I would say that both of you are my favorite writers. So I'm glad, Rakhi, that I could be part of this and the Policy Center and Gender Lab, as well as Jayam's project, which she is working. She's also a Miranda alumna. So I'm glad that this is all coming together. But again, welcome to the Policy Center and Gender Lab. We would like to have you in this in Miranda House when we are actually open now. But once we are able to have programs there, we would definitely like to welcome you. And Rakhi Bakshi has a memorandum of understanding with us, the Her World. So we welcome you to the college. Thank you very much for this wonderful talk this evening. Thank you, Rakhi Bakshi, for this initiative. Really, thank you very much.
Thank you each time,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Nanda, coming and joining here. And I can say that despite her pressing engagements and schedule, she makes it a point to join most of our editions, and that's such a huge encouragement for us. Policy Center and Gender Lab is tirelessly working towards the idea that we have a shared approach on at Her World. So I think it's a partnership which is useful, which encourages us, which, as she rightly said, brings in more solidarity. And Ms. Agrawal, having writers and creative people like you, it only adds to the chain that we are trying to create of holding each other's hand. So thank you so much, Dr. Nanda, once again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nanda, for your kind words. It was such a pleasure to hear, so rewarding for me to learn that you are familiar with my work. And I'm really absolutely delighted to be here talking to Rakhi. And I think it's been a wonderful discussion for me. And thanks so much again for inviting me. And I'd love to be part of any activities that you have in future.
Thank you so much. And of course, I would thank Sapna and all my team members. I can tell you, Ms. Agrawal, that this team, in fact, it all started in COVID only, but the way we have grown, it's also our sheer passion and belief in what we are doing is what is taking us ahead. And we have more plans actually to bring out new ideas, connect with people, understand new issues, address them through our writing. And through the kind of people who are engaging with us. So that's very nice. Of course, at Policy Center Gender Lab, there are a whole lot of activities also, which is again only empowering this whole world of gender equality. So thank you once again. I think more to learn from you, and as you rightly said, skills, abilities, ideas, innovation. I think that's the era that we are in, and we are going to really enjoy that. But enjoy the festivals that you'll be part of also, and enjoy the time of creating your own creations. Thank you so much once again. If there is any question left from any one side, then they can also write in, and maybe they can be forwarded to her, and she can always answer them later as well. Thank you to Jayam once again. Jayam, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, Jayam.
Muted. I think she's muted.
Jem, you are muted. Kindly unmute yours.
Okay, so I unmute myself, but I don't know. Okay, so thank you so much for such an informative show, ma'am. There have been lots of takeaways from this talk, and I hope our viewers would have enjoyed those, like recommendation of Stephen King, writing a lot, or starting with writing a diary. And the whole show seemed to be a sort of a tutorial for the budding writers, and also for those who wants to express themselves and couldn't gather the courage to do so. So thank you so much, ma'am, for the guidance. And on behalf of Her World Policy Center and Gender Lab Miranda House, Honor of Women, I would like to extend my gratitude to you for joining us in this show. And I hope that in future we will also join for future endeavors.
Sure.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much, Rakhi, ma'am, for this show.
Much for being there, and you can all watch us on available on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Insta also, something that I'm being pressurized into getting more active on, and which I think I will be. So thank you, Jayam, once again. Honor of Women has been partnering with us, and they have been very encouraging as well. Thank you, Ms. Agrawal, once again, but we'll be connected, and we would like to really learn from you, from your creative experiences, and I'm sure my young friends have really enjoyed the whole show in terms of getting the value out from there. Thank you so much for joining us on this Saturday evening, and do write in to us for your feedback or any suggestion idea that you have. Also become a member on our web portal. The membership form is available, so be associated with Her World, and let's make this world more beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.